Welcome to Wines We Drink, a podcast for wine lovers and learners. I'm Charlotte Norsworthy Varnum, and together with my counterpart Keith Herndon, we'll be exploring a new wine each week. Keith is a lover of wine, and I'm a learner of wine, and we hope you'll sip along with us. Hello and welcome to the Wines We Drink podcast. I'm Charlotte Varnum, and as always, my co-host Keith Herndon, a certified wine sommelier, is with me to drink and talk about some wine.
Hello, Charlotte. Yes, I am here to drink and talk about wine with you today, but it's not just any wine today. Today's selection, a White Burgundy, is from one of France's historic chateaus in the heart of the Maconnais. So welcome, listeners, to this fifth episode in season 6. I look forward to sharing all of the details about this wine that my wife and I discovered when we spent several hours at this oh-so-beautiful location last year.
Another one of your wine journey inspirations. I've said it before and I'll say it again. We all benefit tremendously from your wine travels. You've brought so many wonderful wines back to share with me and our listeners, and today is no exception. This White Burgundy is going to be such a special treat.
Yes, it is. Some of our listeners may not be up to speed on how the French label their wines. So rather than putting the varietal on the front and center of the label, the French mostly describe their wines by where they're from, right? And they leave it up to the consumer to know what grape is from that area, region, right? But we're going to make this very straightforward from you. This White Burgundy is 100% Chardonnay.
Boom. You know, that's a good thing to point out. Our show attracts everyone from wine novices to wine connoisseurs. And so we hope to meet you wherever you are on your wine journey. And so sometimes we need to take a minute to explain a phrase or a concept. I know I also stand to benefit from that.
Well, that creates a perfect opportunity for a shameless plug for our show. This is season 6. We have 4 episodes posted already this season, plus 60 episodes from our previous 5 seasons. If you listen to them, I guarantee you'll learn something about wine.
There's no shame in plugging our work here on the Wines We Drink podcast, so you will find all of our episodes on all of the major podcast platforms, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We also have a full episode guide at wineswedrink.com.
Charlotte, as we've mentioned, my wife and I first encountered this week's wine traveling in Burgundy last year. So many great wines to enjoy, but this one stood out, and I knew immediately that I wanted to feature it this season.
With so many wines from that trip to choose from, what about this one piqued your interest?
Of course, it tastes amazing, okay?
I trust.
Right. But honestly, I was fascinated by the history of the winery itself.
Right. So wine and history, those two things certainly go together for you. So what is our history lesson here?
Well, this is from Chateau de la Greffière. It's been a wine estate since 1585.
Wow.
That's over 440 years. But even the current family ownership, the Grizzard family, they have tended the vineyards there since 1924.
I mean, it is these long established estates and family-run operations that go back generations. That just fascinates me so much about French wine. And so when you think about that established history, it therefore makes sense on how wine is so closely associated with the French culture.
Yes, and I'm truly fortunate to have had the opportunity to go beyond the bottle and actually visit there. I mean, it just brings that history to life when you're walking those historic grounds and you're seeing the barrel room and you're just talking to the people. It just becomes more.
Yeah.
Right? It becomes more than what's in the bottle, right?
It's like seeing art in person versus a print of it or a recreation online. Yeah. And I'll just say it's another place that you've made me add to my travel bucket list.
Well, if you make it there, you will not be disappointed. The winery's 70 acres are in and around the La Roche Veneuse, which is listed prominently on the wine's label. But just underneath the location name is the phrase sous le bois. And that is a French phrase that will help you understand a bit more of what this location is like. Okay? That phrase translates to below the woods.
Okay.
Right? It's used to indicate that the wine came from grapes harvested in a single vineyard, exclusive to Chardonnay, that the winery describes as a cool spot at the edge of the woods.
Oh, wow. You know, an estate that traces its wine heritage back to the 1500s, and it sits at the edge of the woods. Are you kidding me? This conjures up all sorts of images of a medieval castle and an enchanted forest.
It certainly gave off that vibe when we were there. There is a storybook element to all of this history, but we can't get too carried away. The castle itself, or the chateau, wasn't actually built until 1830. Okay. So it's not medieval, and I don't think those woods are enchanted, but in fact, the whole operation has embraced modern techniques, right? It's entirely certified organic. It has built infrastructure to pump and recycle its water, so it's self-sufficient from that standpoint. It produces 40% of its electricity from solar panels, and more of that capacity is planned. So historic, yes, maybe not medieval and enchanted.
Okay, well, I still will keep the storybook element in my heart, but it does sound like that there's a nice balance there between them preserving history and embracing sustainability to protect its future.
Well said, Charlotte. You'll find this balance throughout the operation. The winemakers here tout their location. It's a hillside exposed to the setting sun, dense limestone-rich soils, perfect for Chardonnay. They rely on that terroir to allow the vineyard's 30-year-old vines to produce this perfect fruit that we are going to experience today. The winery's website said its wine is created in the vineyards, not the cellar. And I think that's really important, statement. It strives to harvest healthy grapes at their perfect ripeness and then uses vinification as, quote, simply the enhancement of the terroir's expression through minimal intervention, end quote. So you see that, you just see that whole concept carried throughout the winemaking process.
How so?
Well, after a 3-hour pressing, the wine is fermented for up to 20 days using only natural yeast, not commercial yeast. It's then rested in stainless steel vats for 6 months to preserve the freshness and that natural minerality before they put it in the bottle. So that's the process, pretty minimal.
Wow. And the result is a wonderful Chardonnay that I know our listeners will really, really enjoy. So shall we drink some wine and talk about these wonderful aromas and flavors? That really is the best part after all.
Yeah, let's drink some today's wine. I'm going to open our bottle of Chateau de la Greffière sous le bois from La Roche-Venus. That's a mouthful.
I'll say.
Okay,
we need an acronym for that one.
Right. I've already got the foil off, so we're going to just get my bottle opener here and get this cork out of there.
And I'll just point out, too, that if you follow us on Instagram at The Wines We Drink, we post bottle shots of all the bottles that we're sipping on each week, so you can take a look at this week's bottle there.
So allow me to pour you some of this Chardonnay, this White Burgundy.
Wow. Okay. A great reflection of the Chardonnay grape just upon first glance. It's that pale straw yellow, exactly what you'd expect from a White Burgundy, and maybe even a little greenish, though, and the highlights around the rim there. Yeah,
I would say that that's a pretty good observation. You know, it's an elegant-looking Chardonnay in the glass.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm feeling some aromas already tickling my nose, so I'm going to go in for some of that.
Yep.
And when you're smelling this glass of wine, that first note that I get is a punch of grapefruit.
Well, Charlotte, the official tasting notes want you to be a little bit more specific on that.
Oh, okay.
Not just grapefruit, but pink grapefruit.
Oh, of course. Oh, let's be a little bit more specific. Okay. Then also on this, aromas of stone fruit, but let me be specific here. I would say apple and peach. I don't think I could get any more drilled down right now.
Well, I'd say that's well done there. You know, allowed me to add these. There's some real subtle floral notes. Mm-hmm. Honeysuckle, lemon verbena.
Oh, yeah. I really like the aromas on this wine a lot. But I want to see if the aromas hold up to the tastes that I'm remembering. So I'm going to go in for a sip.
Yes, right. The aromas in this wine set up the flavor profile nicely.
Wow. Absolutely. It's a mirror image of what you're smelling to what you're tasting. There's that grapefruit, pink grapefruit.
Yep, right.
And those general apple and peach flavors. They're so prominent. It's so juicy.
Right. Maybe that's a Granny Smith apple.
Okay, there you go, right? And a Georgia peach, if we had to clarify.
Right. There's so much richness in this wine, minerality. That limestone soil is speaking to me through this glass of wine.
Absolutely. And as we keep sipping this wine, I'm really just struck by how crisp and refreshing it is from the first sip, and then it immediately smoothens out, and that finish just keeps coming at you with that citrus acidity.
The wine may have had minimal intervention in its making, but it's a complex wine that just speaks to us on so many levels. I mean, like you said, I love its aromas, right? Mm-hmm. And then I love how it's a medium-bodied wine. It's very dry, but it balances its acidity with structure, and that allows for that nice long finish that you just talked about.
And the winery told us that they were striving for a wine that shows off its terroir, one that reflects its origins. So how do you feel about that? Do you think it's achieved that goal?
I say yes, they did. I mean, and you can see that through many of the reviews and articles that have been written about this wine. One flatly stated that this wine was a perfect reflection of its terroir, and another, alluding to the sous le bois phrase, was a bit more poetic, stating that the wine is, quote, like a stroll through a sun-dappled forest, end quote.
A stroll through a sun-dappled forest. Okay, so I'm going to say that we're bringing back some of that storybook element there.
Yeah.
And now I really must go, so I'm going to start packing my bags. But am I going to have any money left for travel after buying a few bottles of this jewel?
You don't have to fret about overspending for this wine. It may be a jewel, but the Vivino app said its national average price is only $22 a bottle. I mean, that is a deal for a white Burgundy of this quality. The Vivino app has it rated as a 3.9 out of 5 stars and considers that among the top 6% of wines in the world.
I mean, that's one heck of a deal. $22 for this wine is certainly good news for our listeners, and that means I'll have room in my travel budget.
Absolutely. We're about to take a break, but don't stray too far away. When we come back, my co-host, as Chef Charlotte, will treat you today's cheese and food pairings.
Thanks, Keith. We'll be back in a moment, and I'll share the selections.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. You are joining us for our 5th episode in Season 6 of The Wines We Drink, and we're delighted that you chose us to spend some time with, learn about wine, right? Now is the time in the show when we feature Chef Charlotte, and she's going to bring her culinary skills to light as she pairs today's wine with cheese and a main entree that I am sure will elevate this entire tasting experience.
Ooh, what a setup. Thank you, Keith. We're going to start our tasting session today with our cheese suggestion. So our wine is a White Burgundy from France, so we are going to stay in that country with a traditional goat cheese known as chèvre. Actually, chèvre is the French word for goat, but we commonly use it in English to describe this French cheese made from goat's milk. It is a famously tangy, tart, and bright cheese with a creamy, spreadable texture.
Well, I do love chèvre, but please explain why you've chosen it to pair with today's White Burgundy, the Chardonnay, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. Chèvre, I feel, pairs very well because the wine's high acidity and that mineral-driven profile cuts through the creaminess of the cheese. I feel like it also highlights its natural tang. And our Sous le Bois label is unoaked, which delivers on that crisp, citrus-forward wine that pairs well with those floral profiles that we were talking about earlier. I feel like that balances the earthy, kind of herbaceous nature of this goat cheese, and I think it's an entirely complementary pairing.
Excellent. That's a fantastic background. So let's have some wine and cheese.
Yes, let's do it. So, of course, I've got some of this chèvre here on a plate with some crackers, so please get you a little schmear. And let's take a bite. And when you're enjoying that bite and sip, look for that acid to really cut through the fat of the cheese and see how that tang ends up coming into play.
Allow me to present you with some chèvre and crackers.
Thank you. Here we go.
Okay, let me get mine.
Going for that sip too.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
You asked me if to look if it was going to cut through that fat of the cheese, and yes, it does. I mean, that's wonderful. I mean, we always talk about this principle in wine and food pairing that suggests how wines and foods from the same region have evolved together over centuries, and that makes them sometimes a natural classic match. I mean, I think you've nailed that principle here. This nice pairing of a French wine and a French cheese, right? I'm going to have to take some more bites here before we move on to the main course.
Yes, please indulge. I'm glad that you're liking this pairing as much as I do. One thing that I'm also noticing kind of as I'm continuing to chew here is that the goat cheese and the wine almost have a similar length finish, right? So they kind of are tap dancing between the two of each other and finishing at the same time. And that herbaceousness there from the goat cheese, I really feel like is what's grounding some of that. So I just love this pairing.
The wine's zesty finish is perfect for this cheese. I think the French would agree that their pairing creates terroir harmony.
Yes, that's a great way to put it. And that's what we're going for, right? Going for more of that harmony. And we're going to try to continue that harmony with our main dish. Maybe it becomes a full orchestra. But this time it's going to be also more of a textural harmony rather than a regional one. We're pairing our wine today with a rainbow trout that is bathed in a light cream sauce.
Oh, wow. Listeners, I've had an advantage over you since I've known that this was coming, okay? As we prepared for this season's episodes, there's always a lot of give and take between me and Charlotte about, about what wines we feature and then the food that goes with them. Well, once we settled on our White Burgundy, well, I kind of dictated that one. Right?
Yeah, true,
okay.
True.
But there was no debate, though, about the food pairing at all. Chef Charlotte zeroed in on serving a nice flaky whitefish. So please share with our listeners why you immediately knew that a white flaky, that texture was going to be right for this wine.
Absolutely, that was something that almost required no discussion between the two of us. Even I knew that with a White Burgundy, especially one from the Maconnais like ours, we needed a combination that mirrors the weight, texture, and flavor profile. So I really wanted to create a balance on the buttery on buttery idea, right? And create more of that harmony through that.
Harmony, yeah, there's that word again, right? And I think it's just so important here when we talk about this pairing.
You're absolutely right. It describes it perfectly. The sweet and firm yet flaky fish of our trout fillet here should not be overwhelmed by the wine. And this one certainly does not. It's both are delicate in nature, so they really complement each other. And instead, the high acidity and the mineral notes in this White Burgundy in particular really cut through the richness of the dish that I've kind of amplified with a light cream sauce.
Well, we have to have a few bites of this wonderful fish before it cools too much,
yes.
Right? So let's jump into our tasting, and then you can tell our audience more about the recipe after we've had a few bites and sips.
Absolutely. Let's go in and sample a few bites of our fish along with our wine pairing here.
Right. Oh, what a delightful dish. The fish is superbly cooked. Just the right texture and firmness. And I must say that the cream sauce is a natural partner for both the fish and the wine.
I completely agree. And there's a lot of recipes out there for a trout and cream sauce. But in general, you really can't go wrong with any kind of thin white fish here that cooks super easily. But the recipe in particular that I chose to go with is one that allows for the fish to really shine. And so it pairs the pan-seared filet with just a simple sauce. It's made with cream, fresh cracked black pepper, a little lemon and capers to cut the richness, and some fresh parsley, butter, and that's it. This elegant dish really comes together quickly, but has a big impact.
Well, that certainly was the right choice. I mean, the bright, crisp acidity and the mineral notes, I mean, it acts as a palate cleanser, right? Cutting through the richness of the cream sauce. That ensures that the dish does not feel too heavy in any way.
Absolutely. And remember, I was really striving for that balance that you get when you have all of those elements combined here in this pairing.
Right. Well, I've seen a lot of pairing suggestions for this wine. One includes Dover Sole, a European delicacy, but that price is a bit much. I mean,
right.
True European Dover Sole is, at least in our market, costing around $35 to $40 a pound, right?
Yes, if you can even find it in the U.S. market, right? Because you can substitute a less expensive Pacific sole is often what you'll find in the States. That's a domestic and certainly more plentiful fish, but that still goes for between $6 and $12 a pound. But for today's episode, I just wanted to go with something a bit more regional from our part of the world. So a rainbow trout was fit for it. And certainly fits the bill for what I was looking for. It was important to find the right fish that, like I said, any kind of flat white fish that is in season with a delicate, light flavor, and then pair that with the right recipe that would allow the fish to shine in a way that also complements our wine.
Well, you certainly did that. I mean, but with so many recipes out there to choose from, you mentioned, how did you decide on this one specifically? So let's spill the secrets a little bit about your process.
if we can even call them secrets. But yes, there's so many modern takes on dishes that feature a white flaky fish, especially in French cuisine. But I'm kind of keeping with what I know, my own personal origins to my love for food. So I chose to go with an adaptation of Julia Child's Sole Meunière, which is otherwise known as sole with butter. And so her recipe is what I chose to adapt for today. It played to that sole pairing that we just talked about, but it was easily adaptable to our trout and what we can find in our area. Her recipe features the ingredients that I mentioned: lemon, capers, parsley, but the richness comes from that browning of the butter, a slight dredging of flour on the fish. And so I converted that into a cream sauce using the flour and butter there, and building a roux out of that to bring the richness into the sauce while keeping just a nice light crisp sear on the filet.
Yeah, well, that crisp sear really works. I mean, it just gives it a nice texture.
Yeah, and again, cooks up in 2 minutes flat. I'm not kidding. Emphasis on flat fish, right? And so a couple years ago, whenever I was visiting Paris, this is perhaps the first on-record trip that I can mention here on Wines We Drink, by the way. So that's so exciting. But I took a walking Julia Child food tour to learn more about her story via the French establishments that she frequented and sought inspiration from in the early days of her food journey. And so that also is kind of the origin for me for where I chose this recipe as for the foundation of today's dish, because this dish was actually Julia's first meal she ever had in France. And that's the one that made her fall in love with French cuisine.
Wow, that's some great background for our listeners. So this was actually an episode inspired not only by my trip to the Maconnais, but to your trip to Paris.
Exactly.
Right?
We're French doubled up.
So once again, well done. It's just simply another culinary triumph on the Wines We Drink podcast. I think we're going to have to expand the title maybe next season to The Wines We Drink and the Foods We Eat.
Hey, I am absolutely down for that. You keep bringing the wine, I'll keep bringing the food.
Well, that brings this week's segment with Chef Charlotte to a close. And that also means that we're at the end of this week's entire episode, right?
Yep. But we'll be back next week with our milestone episode, episode 6, the midpoint of our season.
Yeah, and our loyal listeners already know what's in store for next week. We have a tradition. I guess you can call it a tradition since we've
Certainly by now.
This is our 6th season, right? We have this tradition at the midpoint that we celebrate with a bottle of bubbly.
But next week's bubbly is from a region that I'll bet a lot of our listeners probably aren't expecting.
Well, I'm going to give just a little tiny hint. Think climate change.
Oh, that's a good hint. A Jeopardy question, right? So until next week, cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to Wines We Drink. Listen to our other episodes anywhere you get your podcasts, and be sure to follow us on Instagram at The Wines We Drink. And check out our episode guides at wineswedrink.com. Cheers.